Hello, my name is Doris Neumeyer. I am an administrative nurse clinician, the emergency preparedness coordinator, and the EMS coordinator at Beaumont Hospital Troy in Troy, Michigan. And I'm here today to talk to you about outdoor safety during the summer months specifically. So I have a PowerPoint presentation that they'll be going back and forth between the slides and myself, and we'll be talking about ways that you can help have a safer and healthier summer. So the first slide talks about general tips, and these are things that you should be thinking of regardless of what you are doing outside. We all know we should be using sunscreen. You should be using about a 15 to a 30 at a minimum. You can go higher, but the efficacy of that really is not that well established at this time. Make sure that you're protecting your eyes with sunglasses and make sure the eyes have UV protection. It's also important to remember to have children with sunglasses also, because their eyes also need to be protected so that they don't suffer damage in their later years. Make sure that you use insect repellent if you're out and there's a lot of bugs and you're out in a wooded area, you're out at a bonfire or a campfire, or you're walking in the woods or out and around in the yard. Make sure that after you've been walking in areas where there's high grass or in a woods, or you've been around an animal that has a pet that's been out running in the woods or bushes and stuff like that, that you also check your lower extremities for ticks. To prevent the ticks, what you can do is you can be wearing boots and pants or high socks to prevent them from getting onto your skin themselves. And very important also is to make sure that you do keep hydrated. Very often in the summertime we forget to keep drinking water, and we like to drink other like soft drink beverages and things, and those may actually tend to assist in dehydrating us and making us a little more vulnerable to getting heat stroke and that. Also, make sure that you're aware of the weather. And this is very important. So if you're going to be going out for a picnic, if you're going out to the beach, you're going out for a hike or whatever, and for the day, make sure that you're checking the weather to see if there's going to be any thunderstorms later on, if a cold front's coming in. Make sure that if it's going to get colder that you take the appropriate clothing with you. If you've got children, that you've got sweats, shirts, or long pants and that for them also. If there is a threat of thunderstorms, and they start coming, if there is lightning and thunder, make sure that you take cover for that. Also for severe winds, trees that are bending more than, say, at a 45-degree angle. If the tornado warning comes out, which means that there's sightings or a high likelihood. The weather sirens that we frequently hear and are usually tested on the first Saturday of every month at 1 p.m. and drive all of our pets a little crazy, and they start howling, at least our dogs do. Those actually don't always just indicate that there is a tornado coming your way. It means that there's severe weather and that you do need to take cover. So that's very important to know, because some people think that it's only meaning that it's going to be a tornado, but it is an emergency warning system, so it can mean things other than just the tornado weather. So for severe weather, what you should do to be ready, if you have to take cover going into a lower level of your house, going into an inner room that doesn't have external windows and has sturdy walls, make sure that you have a little emergency kit ready. Flashlight, some water, drinking water, a NOAA radio that you can get, or weather radio, batteries for that if it's not a hand crank. Some snacks, food. If you've got children, make sure you've got games or some way to entertain the children also. And if you've got pets and those are going to be with you, you also want to make sure that you have something to keep them happy, quiet during that time also. So now we'll move on to biking safety. And one of the things that's very important is that we really need to make sure that we are wearing helmets when we are out bicycling. They've been shown to be very safe devices, pieces of equipment. They've prevented a lot of people from getting head injuries and other trauma to their heads. So children, if they're riding their bicycles, make sure that they're riding on the sidewalks. Make sure you also get an appropriate size for a bike. As a parent myself, I know sometimes the kids are just about outgrowing the one size of a bicycle and you want to go up one more level. You really need to make sure that you're getting the size that is appropriate for that child, so that it's not too big for them to handle, and also that it's not too little for them to handle either. And then children should also be taught that if they have to cross the road, that they should be getting off of their bicycle and walking the bicycle across the road after they look both ways to make sure that traffic is clear, just as they would if they were walking across. The reason we don't want them riding their bicycles across is because if they were to happen to fall or get scared or lose control of the bike and, jerk either way, they may in fact actually, fall off then and actually end up getting more hurt. So we don't want them to do that. For older kids, if they're riding in the street, you need to make sure that you're riding with the traffic. There's a lot of people that still think, I know when I was young, we were taught to ride against traffic, and that changed many years ago because it's actually safer to ride along with traffic. If cars are coming towards you, there's little places for them to go to get out of your way if there's oncoming traffic. If, however, you are traveling along in the same pattern, the same direction with traffic, and there's oncoming traffic coming, the cars that are coming up behind you can slow down and just go slower until it's safe for them to pass you. Make sure that you also are obeying all traffic signs and signals. You use your hand signals for turns. Make sure that you've got lights or reflectors on your bicycle if you are riding at night. And you definitely need to make sure that you are following all of the traffic laws. If the traffic light says for you to stop, if there is a stop sign for you, if there's a yield sign for you, you need to follow the same rules of the road. If there is a vehicle, such as a car or a truck in the roadway with you, you both have the same rights. You do not have more rights in the road like a pedestrian may if you are riding your bicycle in the roadway. Another thing to keep note of is that bicyclists, regardless of their age, can get tickets for violating traffic laws if they are riding in the road and not following them. So let's move on now to water safety. Make sure that if you're around the water that you have sun protection. Again, that sunscreen comes up and so do the sunglasses. You want to make sure that you're not burning your skin and predisposing yourself for cancer, and you want to make sure that you're protecting your eyes from damage progressing as you get older. Always make sure you're cautious with children around water. If you're unsure, if the child is not familiar with pools or around bodies of water, make sure that they're wearing life jackets or at a very minimum floaties that go around their arms. And they also have other types of flotation devices that they go like across the chest and around the arms, but they aren't an official Coast Guard approved life jacket. Make sure that you also don't dive off docks or the shoulders of others. This is something that you always see, and it's always a lot of fun for kids. They think that they're in the pool or they're out in the lake, and you stand on somebody's shoulders and you dive into the water. The reason for that is because that's one of the leading causes for neck injuries, back injuries, and other types of injuries to your extremities, is because if you dive into the water and it's a little bit shallower, you dive at a sharper clip than what you're expecting to, and you hit the ground, the bottom of the pool, the bottom of the lake. You could hit something that's even floating that is submerged also in the water. So you want to make sure that we aren't doing anything that can cause that type of injuries. If you're swimming at a beach, you want to make sure that the beach is open for swimming. They do close beaches periodically during the summer because of high bacterial counts of the water. And you want to make sure that the weather conditions are also safe. If there's thunder or lightning, you should get out of the water and you should take cover because you do not want to get struck by lightning. And you also want to make sure that there are not high winds causing strong undercurrents if you're at a beach, especially a larger lake. We're surrounded by Great Lakes here, so that you aren't pulled under. If there's supposed to be a lifeguard on duty and there's no swimming or going into the water at the beach unless the lifeguard is there, you want to make sure that you also don't go in there. Frequently, we have a lot of lakes that have public beaches and they've got buoys around them. And you want to make sure that you stay within those buoys. When you go outside of those buoys, there are boats, there is other, maybe jet skis, and other type of recreational vehicles on the water that might not see you bobbing in the water, swimming in the water, and could run over you or could some other way harm you. So you want to make sure that you stay within the buoys at a designated beach. Which leads us to not swimming in no swimming areas. Frequently at a lot of parks, they will have a lot of water and there's beachy looking areas, but you're not supposed to be swimming in those areas, and they will say no swimming. And sometimes that's because there's things in the water there, such as Stony Creek, that actually was land, and when they drained it out a little bit a couple years ago, they actually still found some tree stumps in the water down on the ground. So you could trip hazards in that, and you also don't know, some people don't pick up their trash and their garbage, so you could also injure yourself by walking and broken glass in that and get cuts and lacerations to your feet. And be careful if you're swimming off of boats. Make sure that if you're going to jump out into the water that you jump in feet first, don't dive in. Again, that's because you don't want to be hitting the bottom. You don't want to be hitting something that is partially submerged in the water either. If you are out on a boat, make sure that you have the required number of life jackets on the boat, which is the number of people that you have in the boat. You need to have a life jacket for each person. In addition, that life jacket has to be the appropriate size. So if you have children, you need to make sure that you have the appropriate child-sized life jacket also for them. And it's very important, just like before we get in a car and we let our children drive, we really should be taking boating classes before we start to take a boat out onto the water. The U.S. Coast Guard offers them, and most sheriff's department also offer them. If you call their numbers, their offices, they should be able to tell you when they are going to be having the classes. Too often, boating accidents are because people were unfamiliar with the total operation of a boat and the rules of the road. So if you're going out on a lake for a while, the inside lakes, inland lakes, probably are not as big of an issue where you can see land all around you. But if you're going out to Lake St. Clair, onto Lake Huron, or some other big lake, even Lake Michigan, make sure that you have a working cell phone with you or a marine radio. The reason for this is because if the weather does go bad, if something does start happening, you have, so to speak, a lifeline that you can call somebody to get help for. Know the weather before you leave the dock. If there's a big storm that's rolling in, if they're predicting that high winds are going to be coming, make sure that you are not going out if your boat is not rated for that type of weather. Always make sure that somebody at home or somebody that's on shore, not going out with you in the boat, knows what time to expect you back and at what port you're coming back if you're coming back into a different dock or a different place. Say you're going out and you're going to be going to dinner someplace and maybe perhaps spending the night at that location. And most importantly too, know the rules of the lake. And this gets back to that boating safety course. We always drive our motor vehicles. Here in the States, we drive them on the right side of the road. Boating is a little bit different. They also have different types of road signals, so to speak, on the lake. You've got your buoys, you've got your red and your green, and the buoys mean different things. So you really should be having a boating safety course so that you understand all the rules of the road. The other thing about water safety, and we talked about knowing the bacterial counts if you're going to the beach, is that there are recreational water illnesses, and there's a multitude of them. I'm not going to get into the specifics of them, except to let you know that as the signs and symptoms of them can be diarrhea, vomiting, cramps, a loss of appetite, a fever, weight loss. You can get skin rashes, skin infections, ear aches, and things such as that. And these can be spread through pools that are even chlorinated or little kiddie pools that aren't chlorinated. They can be passed through hot tubs, splash parks, and even lakes. Fountains that are like your decorative fountains that people sometimes go jumping in and that, and also in rivers, oceans even too. So they can be contaminated by human waste, animal waste, sometimes there's sewage spill-offs. Some of your water systems, they actually have, in the case of there's large rainfalls that come in, they will dump water from the rainfall that goes into the sewer system into a large body of water. So you want to make sure that you're not going swimming real close to that location or shortly after that happens. And if you have diarrhea, please don't go swimming. We all try to clean very well after we have accidents or we go to the bathroom, but if you have diarrhea, you may in fact actually be at increased risk of sharing that with other people, and it's really not something that people want to share with. The same thing is if you have children who are not potty trained and they're still in diapers or in the swimming diaper things that they have, make sure that you're constantly checking them and changing their diapers as frequently as you can. Make sure that you shower before and after. Most public pools, including school pools, require you to shower before and after. And a lot of times we tend to forget to shower beforehand because, well, we're going into the pool, why should we? Well, the reason we want you to shower beforehand is so that you can get, if you do have any contamination or any germs, bacteria on you that you may have picked up, that you are washing those off before you get into the pool, and so that they aren't there for other people to get infected with. And then if you're swimming, avoid getting the water in your mouth, and definitely try not to swallow the water if you do get any in your mouth. This is something that is difficult to teach little kids because they like to go along blowing bubbles in the water and stuff like that. Make sure that you take your children frequently for bathroom breaks instead of waiting for them to say, I've got to go to the bathroom, I've got to go to the bathroom, and they're running around crazy. Because you really want to get them before they have any accidents and they contaminate the water. If you've ever been in a public swimming pool, and nothing's more distressing than to find out that they have to close the pool because someone's had an accident. And always make sure that you do wash your hands before and after you're changing a child's diaper too. So moving on to food safety and continuing on again with washing your hands, make sure that you do wash your hands before and after you preparing food. If you're going to be marinating food, and this is the time for grilling and everything, so frequently we want to marinate our foods, our meats and that. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're doing that in the refrigerator, and also that you're thawing the food in the refrigerator and it's not out at uncontrolled temperatures in your room, kitchen or whatever, so that the bacteria can't start growing. Make sure that you're grilling on a hot surface. Always make sure if you've got a gas grill or an electric grill that you warm it up good so that the grill itself is very hot and you actually almost shear the outside of the meat that you're cooking. And if you've got charcoal, that you make sure that it's good, it's white, and it's very hot also. And use a meat thermometer to find out what the temperatures are of the food. And safe temperatures for cooking food, beef is about 145 to 165. If you're cooking a piece of steak or a roast, it's about 145. If you're cooking hamburgers, hot dogs, brats and stuff like that, you really should be cooking to about 160. Chicken is 165 degrees Fahrenheit, and fish, there's not really a temperature. It's opaque and it's flaky. And you also make sure that if you had your meat on a plate before you took it out to the grill, that you get a clean plate to put the meat on after it's cooked, or you wash that plate and dry it off before you put the cooked meat back on it. And make sure that if you've got foods that have to be kept cold, that they're kept on ice, such as potato salad, coleslaw, and other types of things like that, that you want to make sure that, especially if they've got mayonnaise and eggs in them, so that they don't go bad on you and cause some other illnesses. So let's move on now a little bit to fishing. When you're out fishing and if you're casting, make sure that you're very careful when you're casting, especially if you're doing with children. They tend to not be aware of the fact that the hook can go pretty much anywhere, and it can hook somebody in the face, the ear. We've even seen people with hooks that they've gotten in their eye. So you want to make sure, because they can be very painful. If you've gotten a fish and the fish has swallowed the hook or it's down into the mouth, you want to make sure you're using the proper tools like pliers and a towel or something around the fish as you hold it to remove the hook from the fish. And use caution when you're walking on the docks, because it may be uneven, it may move a little bit, so you don't want to be unsteady and think that you're going to be going straight like you are on a solid sidewalk and fall into the water. And also, if you're going shore fishing, you want to make sure that you're being careful as you're walking along the shore, especially if you've got rubber boots on or waders on, so that you don't stumble and fall. If you're fishing from a boat and you've got like a rowboat or a smaller boat, that generally you're supposed to be sitting down in. If you do have to stand up, make sure that you're being very careful and that you are watching your balance. And it's actually advisable not to be standing up in those little boats because they do tip very easily. And you could potentially knock your head, be knocked out and drown or fall into the water. And if you are in the boat, make sure that you have the life jackets and make sure that you're wearing the life jackets. This is especially important if you don't know how to swim, but even if you do know how to swim, as I just mentioned, if you do get knocked overboard and you get knocked out, you hit your head on the boat as you're falling out, or you get hit something that's submerged in the water, you could lose your consciousness and you would not be able to swim. So the life jacket will bring you up to safety above the water. So now if we're hiking, we're going to go a little bit inland here. Again, you want to make sure that you've got sunscreen, you've got your sunglasses. If you're going to be in a sunny area, sometimes in the woods, it's a little bit more of a canopy with all the trees that are have their leaves and that on them. But you really want to make sure that you do have insect repellent on. Not only just on your exposed skin, but I would also recommend spraying it on your legs, your calves, your lower part of your body where ticks may actually attach. That helps to repel them. Make sure you've got proper footwear. If you're going on an advanced hiking trail, a moderate hiking trail, you probably want to have something on more than just flip-flops or tennis shoes. You may need to actually have hiking shoes, hiking boots on. And if you're going to be going for a long, prolonged hike, and you're going to be gone like it's a day hike or an overnight hike, make sure that you have a map of the area, you've got a compass, and you've got a GPS unit. A cell phone is also very good to have, and many cell phones also have a GPS tracker on them. Make sure that somebody knows where you're going at, what trails you're going to be using, and how they can get in contact with you, and perhaps even set up scheduled times that you would be checking in with them. Watch and avoid for any wildlife that's out there. They aren't used to humans. They may seem to be very friendly, but you want to be careful of any snakes, raccoons, possums, insects, which especially ticks and mosquitoes because of the tick-borne and mosquito-borne illnesses. And again, make sure that you keep hydrated, that you keep enough fluids on board so that you can make it through the whole hike. So motor vehicles. We frequently hear during the summer and the hot months how people have forgotten a child or a pet in a vehicle with the windows up, and somebody comes by and they break into the window. So there are some ideas that I've recently found out that seem to be very good in reminding us to remember that we do have a child in the back of the vehicle. So what you can do is, as you put the child in the back seat, make sure you put your phone or your purse, backpack, briefcase, anything that you know you're going to be needing when you get out of that vehicle in the back seat next to the child. That way there, when you go back to get it, it'll be a visual reminder that you have the child there. I know that sounds funny, but that's what people have said, is that the child was so quiet, they fell asleep, they forgot that they were there. Another idea that I thought was kind of cute is putting a stuffed animal in the car seat when the child's not in the car seat. And then before you put the child into the car seat, you take that stuffed animal out and you put it on the front seat next to you. And so that as you're getting out of the car, you may go to reach for your purse, your cell phone or something. You see the stuffed animal and you realize that's supposed to be in the car seat. I have the child and I know I need to get that child out. And when you aren't in your car or your vehicle, make sure that it is locked. Children do have a tendency to want to go into vehicles, pretend that they're driving, jump around in them, do all sorts of things, play hide and go seek. And in the summertime, if they do close the doors and they get locked in there, it could actually result in a very bad outcomes. Make sure that you carry water in your car. In the summertime, I generally pick up a case of water and carry it in the back of my car. And as if it gets down to I only have about a quarter of a case left, then I usually get another case and make sure that I keep replenishing it. If my children are in sports and they're doing a lot of activities outside, I usually carry a little bit more because I've been to many different types of outdoor events, soccer games, baseball games, other types of events like that, where the children they've only brought one bottle of water for the game, and they actually need more, and so having more water to share is always a good thing. And also you can use it to hydrate your pets in the extreme hot weather too. Okay, getting into a little bit of animal safety, especially domestic animals, dogs and cats. Always ask someone first if it's okay if you can approach and pet their animal. And you need to make sure that you teach this to your children. People that have pets, dogs, know their animal best, and they may know that their animal may seem to be very tame, very friendly, but maybe it just has had bad experiences with children and it just really doesn't like children. Or maybe it's gotten hurt and it's really in a lot of pain and it's really not in the mood to be pet or approached by anyone. So you really want to make sure that you are checking with somebody first before you approach an animal to pet it. And make sure that you provide your dogs, if they're outside animals, with shelter and with water. Especially on the hot and humid days, it's very important to make sure that they have appropriate shelter. Make sure their vaccinations are up to date and that they're registered, licensed, I should say, in your county or your city, whatever municipality that you live in. And don't try to approach wild animals. Wild raccoons and possums, coyotes, fox, ducks, geese, they seem to be very cute, very cuddly, the stuffed animals are, but the animals themselves, they can be very vicious and their bites can be extremely life-threatening sometimes. And you really want to make sure that you don't get that close, that they have the opportunity to bite you. We have had experience with people actually getting bitten by a goose. The goose was being defensive of their little baby that this person got too close to, and the goose bit the person in the leg, and it really didn't draw any blood. It looked like a very benign actually injury, and the person actually ended up in the hospital and even the intensive care unit for a few days. So you really want to make sure that you aren't approaching wildlife as cute and as docile and cuddly that they may seem. You really want to make sure that you are instead keeping your distance and just taking pictures from a distance for them. And keep the cuddling to the stuffed animals. For petting farms and fairs, carnivals and that, you really want to make sure that you're washing your hands before and after you have contact with the animals. And this is especially true when you're talking with swine or with pigs. There are several diseases and we've had a few outbreaks with them here in Michigan. So you want to make sure that you are washing your hands before and after contact with all animals, but especially those that are in petting farms and fairs, carnivals and that. To make sure that you don't pick up any unwanted diseases. And remember that when you're at a fair or a carnival, don't try to sneak your kid in by putting extra high shoes on them so that they can meet that height restriction. The height guidelines are on those rides for a reason, and it's for the safety of the riders so that they don't get thrown from the ride, so that they're restrained properly in the ride itself, in the car, and not get hurt, get jostled around too much in the ride either. Also be mindful of the weather, and if it looks like there's a big storm coming in, say with thunder and lightning, make sure that you seek cover and you don't necessarily want to be around a bunch of metal equipment during a thunder and lightning storm. And usually a good day at the fair is when it's really bright out, it's sunny and no clouds in the sky. So you want to make sure that you also stay hydrated and you've got your sunscreen on and your sunglasses also. Now we'll move on to fireworks, and we just had the 4th of July, and I think we've all heard about some of the injuries that people sustained over the 4th of July by using fireworks and misusing them, I should say. So we need to make sure that first of all that if you purchase fireworks that you handle and store them safely in a dry location. Make sure that you read the instructions, make sure that they are legal for the area that you are going to be in. Don't wear loose clothing when you're using fireworks. Don't have children wear loose clothing either when they're using fireworks or when they're going to be using sparklers either. And also, alcohol and fireworks don't mix very well at all. There can be a lot of injuries and a lot of, say, people think they're being playful, they're horsing around, and a firework can go off in the wrong direction. It can go off in somebody's hand because they were delayed in releasing it and letting it throwing it into the off way for like a firecracker. And also, don't put used sparklers on the ground. It's a tendency, I think, that a lot of people do, is that when the sparkler is done, we tell our kids, just throw it down on the ground, and you've got that hot wire down there on the ground, or you've got a piece of wood stick down there on the ground. Problem with it is that piece of metal, a sparkler heats up, and it burns at around 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's pretty hot. And if you have children around there, and as they're throwing it down, if it hits somebody, it's very easily, it can cause a very bad burn, and they are very painful. So what we suggest is that you use some kind of a bucket, and you put water in that bucket, and then they put it in with the handle sticking out, and they'll hear a little sizzle as they put it into the bucket of water. And then you also, it's easier to clean them up, so when you go to cut your grass or whatever, you don't end up with them getting all caught up in the lawnmower. And if it's on a beach, you don't have people walking barefoot and getting hit in the foot with wire left over from the sparklers. If it's been dry for an extended period of time, or if it may have just rained, buckets and buckets of water, make sure though that it has not all dried up, and it's not, you don't have dry woods or plants and that around in the area. Make sure you aren't shooting them off around other houses, because the fireworks can come down and they can start fires on the roofs of houses. Also, if a firework does not, you light it and it doesn't go off, do not start handling it right away. Do not try to relight it. Let it sit there for a while, and then put it in a bucket of water overnight, and then dispose of it. Put it in a plastic bag and put it in your trash if it's a smaller firework. For larger fireworks and large quantities of fireworks, you really need to dispose of those in a more appropriate way, because the EPA gets a little concerned with all the chemicals that are in those fireworks. So you may need to call your law enforcement agency and find out how they would like you to dispose of either unused fireworks or dead fireworks that the fuses did not go off on. Make sure that you don't let little children or unresponsible children, even unresponsible adults, use fireworks. You want to make sure that they're going to be able to listen to your commands, which means that, don't be running, don't be going up and trying to poke people with them. Just make sure that you're holding it in your hands, and you can wave it around a little bit, but making sure that you're aware of who is around you. Which brings us to the thing that you probably want to make sure that the children are about 2-3 feet apart from each other, or a couple of arms lengths apart. Make sure that they aren't doing horseplay with the fireworks and trying to do things that look cute, look funny, because that's how people can get hurt. We mentioned a bucket of water for the sparklers. Also keep a bucket of water, water hose, a fire extinguisher handy if you are shooting off fountain fireworks and such, because should that go and start a fire, then you would have something to extinguish that with. Only light one firework at a time. Only use fireworks outside. I know that sounds like it's a no-brainer, but some people may be tempted to use fireworks or sparklers in the house, and it's not a good idea, and it's never a good idea to use fireworks on a boat. Make sure that if you're shooting off fountains or other types of fireworks, that you have a flat, stable surface on the ground, or if it's on a table, make sure that the table is sturdy and it's not wobbly, and it won't start moving or jostling as the fireworks go off. Don't use glass or metal containers to shoot off fireworks either, because should the firework malfunction and explode in the glass jar, it could push that glass out, and it could impale, cut you in your skin, and that along with the metal cans. And that concludes my presentation. I hope you've learned a few tips of how to keep safe and have an enjoyable, fun summer. There's lots of ideas in there also of what you can do to have a fun summer, and please be safe. Thank you.